So one more
That's
thing,
same.
another thing I wanted to go through with you real quick too is, and I really didn't, I hate to do this, but all the speculation about the bloody term Sylvanic and all the garbage that's going on with it, I have sent Dr. Meldrum a link to an area that is actually Sylvanic. And now Dr. Meldrum is only going to answer yes or no questions. I have a few questions for him. So the link that I sent you, Dr. Meldrum, you've confirmed it by going into Google Maps on your own. Is that not correct?
That's right.
And now, is it vividly clear to you where the name Sylvanic was derived from?
It is.
It is. Would you believe me if I told you only a short distance from the area that I gave you on the Google Maps that there is a Sylvanic trail? Would that actually make sense? Would it be very logical to understand there's a Sylvanic trail right by the Google Map area I showed you?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. Given a name association, absolutely.
So now, I guess I got to let you speak here. Do you see how ridiculous it's been? Blowing my mind for years. People have called me a liar because my mom's name is Sylvia, and they're like, "Oh, he named this area. It's all garbage." It's actually, and it's Sylvanic is derived from a Latin term, and he's calling it native and blah blah blah. There's actually, I'll tell you something else that's really amazing and just blew my mind. Is this area that I showed you? Sylvanic is right beside it, and as I've said before, the natives that are right in that region, the natives that have actually given me permission to go, I actually wasn't allowed to go back to this area because an elder from the area wanted everybody gone from doing Sasquatch research there. That elder has passed away just this year, and the new chief called me up and said, "Hey, would you like to come start doing research here?" So I'm going back there. This is where I filmed the video 2 and video 3. But what's awesome about it is Sylvanic and that those native people in that area, their term for Sasquatch is Savanuk, and this area is named Sylvanic. Like it, it's like holy. It's pretty. You start thinking because Sylvanic really is. It's a very. I can understand why people. It is like Sylvan is Latin for wooded area or something, right? So to be in an area that's very wooded, and yet the term for Sasquatch there is Savanuk, Sylvanic. And my native teacher told me that the area was derived from the native terminology. So lots of stuff to go into and lots of interesting stuff. But is it just one last time, I mean, in your own words, Dr. Meldrum, do you really see where the Sylvanic area is? Do you get where it's all coming from?
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm looking at it right here on the map, and I can see where you have derived that name. And from experience living in many different parts of the country and recognizing that a huge percentage of the local names are derived from native terms, native name place names. That wouldn't surprise me at all that there would be a connection between some native etymology, some derivation from a native language of that local place name.
Very, very, very cool stuff.
There.
Very interesting. Sorry. I mean, and you don't believe you don't think I went to that area and named the area, do you?
I don't think so.
Wow.
Nor do I think that you after the fact went around and fished through the gazetteer until you found something. I mean, because you had mentioned the general location to me, I'm sure previously, as I recall.
Yeah.
And so the chances of you finding something that fit some concocted story in that general area would be kind of outlandish. And my attitude has always been, so what? I mean, these people who don't know, and instead of judging you solely on the basis of what you have put forward as evidence, instead of coming up with all of these weird conspiracy theories that they can't back up, at least not.
Well,
not seen the demonstration
this is one of the reasons it's a fact. People say, "Oh, he's a proven hoaxer." It's a fact, and you go, "What are you talking about?" And they go, "Oh, he even invented the whole name up. It's not even real." That's one of the facts that proves me a hoaxer. Yeah. It's a fact that my sister is a special effects makeup artist, and it's proven fact. No, all these things that people have. I mean, you've been around. I have to, deep heartfelt gratitude for you. There were different things that came out about me when I started doing the radio show with you, and you stood up and you went into. I tell fans of mine or people that are supporters of my work, don't even bother. like, have a look at stuff if you want to, but really, try to take it with, like, really step back and go, wait a second. If he did name the place after his mother, how does that make it a hoax? He loves his mom? It's like ridiculous. One of the facts that I'm a hoaxer on a major website is my dad dated a woman who owned a fabric store. No, he's a hoaxer. That's it. It's fact. Case closed. Over. Why the hell did my dad have to date a woman? I actually went and asked my dad, Dad, did you date a woman who owned a fabric store? He's like, well, my girlfriend went to a fabric store. That's how we made those curtains. Oh, so somebody caught my dad in a fabric store with his girlfriend buying purple curtains, and now I'm a hoaxer. That's solid evidence to me. That's a good fact. And this is legit. People are out there. And now what they do is they say, oh, he's a proven fact. Multiple times proven hoaxer, proven that his dad did this, his mom. It's a fact, and I don't want to discuss it anymore. And you can't end the conversation like that because it doesn't exist. It's not a fact. And I expect as time goes on, people will start to realize that my stuff is like the Patterson film. It comes out like, wow, this is real. Hey, this is what they really do. Hey, this is anthropologically correct. So I'm very confident in those facts.
Yeah. Well, and I think your approach was a prudent one. It's you're not going to. I mean, it's wasted effort to try to convince everyone and try to head off all of those conspiracy angles and so forth. And basically, your evidence just has to speak for itself.
Absolutely.
And once you have put your evidence out there to be scrutinized by authoritative figures, individuals, can I mention that you're going to follow through with my original?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I actually made a mistake. I made a mistake and said I publicly said on a video, I think, that it was MK Davis that was going to analyze my footage through you. And that is incorrect. It is Bill Munz.
It was Bill Munz. No, I've discussed it with Bill Munz, and of course Bill Munz harbors reservations. Some of the same reservations that had occurred to me early on before we had met.
Yep.
And before I'd examined some of your other pieces of video or experienced what we experienced in the field together. Mm-hmm. But I had challenged you to put together a set of files that and had asked Bill if he was willing to scrutinize the original raw footage, and he is quite eager to. And then circumstances were such that you dropped off the scene and out below the radar, and we never followed through with that. So I'm glad that you've expressed to me the willingness to see that through, and I touched base with Bill again, and he is still quite eager to have a close scrutiny of that and offer his opinion and assessment of it. So
I'm very excited about that.
I think that's an important step,
Yes, I agree.
Otherwise, as I try to do more and more, with the exception of when I'm asked for an interview or I'm asked to share my points of view at a speaking engagement, I keep to myself. I don't frequent a lot of blogs or lists and kind of actually try to stay away from a lot of them for the same reason you described. I don't like to get my frustrations up at some of the inane things. Although I must say there are also nuggets of insight and perspective that I appreciate and I value, and when they're offered in a constructive way and not in an ad hominem attack, it's very stimulating to.
I agree.
To to juxtapose your perception, your own idea, your own opinion against that of someone else's that hopefully is based on a rational thought pattern and not some emotional.
Well, if we can't keep an open mind to constructive criticism, we should not be doing this. And I love I love the skeptics. I love constructive criticism, as long as it's not just don't. If you're getting angry, if you're starting to feel hateful, and you're getting you're feeling hostile about it, then you should not be conversing. And I have no interest in having any discussions with you whatsoever. You should know too, Jeff, real quick. In my last Bigfoot North video that I did, I was professionally investigated. I had an investigator go through all my files, and I gave him all kinds of information. And he found a fact that I found so tremendously interesting. Every single I've submitted my footage to CTV News, CNN, Global, BBC. They've all had the same footage I'm going to submit to you in Bill Mum. So I have no fear of anybody analyzing it. I know it's real, and I'm always interested in the feedback. But every single time someone has taken my videos, stolen videos from me, and never even attempted to interview me, it's always a terribly negative and very hostile perspective. Every single time. Every time somebody calls me up and says, hey, can I have some of your footage? Hey, can I have a look at this? I've always been transparent. I've always said, yes, absolutely. And every single time that person, whether it was CTV News or CNN or BBC, every time they came back, they did an article and a story that was very open-minded, even very positive. So it'll shock you to know that when people steal my stuff, it's negative and hateful, and when people ask for it and do a professional, appropriate interview, it's actually quite the opposite. So I found that not at all surprising, actually. That, and you should ask people that. That's one thing I'm going to do from now on. Because as an investigator, also understand that if you steal something from me, and then I'm the primary witness, when I film a Sasquatch, I'm the one out there, I'm the witness, and those people don't even attempt to interview me, in the investigator's opinion that worked with me, he said, you are grossly incompetent if you can't even say you attempted to interview the primary witness. And that's the other thing people should keep in mind is these people that do steal my stuff have never even attempted to interview me. And that is, in his words, and I love quoting him this, it's grossly incompetent. And if you consider that an investigation, you are grossly incompetent, and I profoundly concur with that statement. It's incompetent. You didn't even try to interview me. I'm the witness. And they derive all these facts from me. First thing you should ask them, hey, so you got that photograph of Todd? Did you ask him for it? They'll say no. And then say, did you interview him or even attempt to interview him? They'll say no. And then, who do you think you are, even starting to be judgmental when you're just grossly incompetent? So anyways, I thought that was a really interesting fact. There's lots of people that have done really cool there's lots of stuff. A Utah Sasquatch guy took a look at my video 5 that I was morphed into. I actually have a whole video on that you should watch, Jeff, where I use pine needles to measure the size of that Sasquatch's head. It's a very, very cool video. But anyways, this guy from Utah Sasquatch took, apparently in Photoshop, if you take a human being's eye out and you paste it in between, like a third eye, it matches where you have 3 eyes across. And unless you're deformed in the face, every human being, doesn't matter how big you are, always exhibits this trait. Well, the Sasquatch in video 5, when they took the eye and pulled it out, they actually could put 2 eyes in between, which means a lot. It's probably very significant to scientists. It should be very significant to understand that their head is spaced that way, their eyes are put that far apart, their nose is that big, and those are really, really the conversations I'd like to have, like I've had with Ian Redman and other PhDs I can't mention yet, that come back to me and go, if he does this, if his eyes are like that, if his nose is like this, you can say he does these kind of things. And that kind of science is absolutely what I'm looking for. It's, people, based on phenotypes, scientists like you can tell me so much. I mean, his face doesn't protrude. His nose is flat, and it doesn't, his face doesn't come out and protrude like a gorilla or a chimpanzee. And that's something that John Bitternagel just had to recently accept, even in the sightings. And that's very significant. No canines. The fact that, the shape of their eyes, the color of their eyes, so many things. The fact that they have a temporalis muscle sometimes. So, like the Patterson film had a female with a temporalis muscle and a large sagittal crest. And I believe that's not, in gorillas, some gorilla females have that and some don't. And I think Sasquatch go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, yeah, it's always been assumed that it's a gender thing, and certainly it's more pronounced in males as a result of the robusticity of the skeleton. But it's more a size thing. If there's not enough cranial capacity for the necessary volume of muscle, then you have an extra flange of bone, that ridge of bone, to provide additional surface area. But we're not even absolutely certain that that Sasquatch has a pronounced sagittal crest. I mean, it's very likely, I think, that it does, but some of that peaking, it's certainly not the nature like in a gorilla.
Absolutely.
And a gorilla, the profile is very misleading because they have a large pad on top of their head too, that obscures the actual bony contour that you would see in lateral view. So anyway, it's you can get in trouble if you're too set in your assumptions about certain things, and better to weigh multiple possibilities until sufficient evidence surfaces.
And I always work very hard to keep an open mind. I just like the accumulation of evidence and moving forward. I make most of what I have is hypothesis, and it's basically prove it wrong, prove it right, and move forward. So I guess congratulations are in order for you. You're the recipient of the Tim Dillsdale Award for the Society for Scientific Exploration. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that was a surprising little honor that was bestowed, and I can't claim much responsibility, I guess, to some degree. But I mean, I like to think of it more as an acknowledgement of the significance of the what am I trying to say? The changing attitude in the science towards this subject matter, that we're making inroads, and so this was one of the first times that it was awarded to a cryptozoologist, and particularly one looking at relic hominoids. But it gave me the great opportunity to make a presentation to the society there, which had a diversity of academics from various disciplines. They're certainly skewed somewhat towards the
likelihood of it.
Psychological, paranormal.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're looking. They're dealing with some of the same kinds of issues in trying to rationally and objectively investigate phenomenon that are seen by their disciplines as being fringe. And so when you speak to a room full of people who are, in fact, a gentleman, now his name escapes me, but gave a talk at this conference prior to my presentation. And it was just amazing how some of the material that he presented as far as the process of science, the challenges of doing fringe science, were parallel to things I was going to talk about. Even almost verbatim in some instances. Yeah. So it was quite gratifying to get up and reiterate some of those same things in the context of the study of relic hominoids. But and it forced me to kind of really think through some of the things that I have been talking about. In fact, last year, the theme of my public speaking engagements, instead of focusing on the Patterson-Gimlin film as I'm trying to do this year, was on this topic of establishing a context for the notion that there are hominin species still alive today besides Homo sapiens, and so I've a lot of things have become very clear to me now as to why, for example, when Ivan Sanderson published his book in 1961, when he proposed at least 4 different types of subhuman hominoid that might still be on the planet. He didn't use the term relic hominoid, but he used his term ABSM for the acronym for abominable snowman. But but in 1961, when he published that book, it wasn't just a matter of what's the likelihood that something could exist like this. It was seen as just impossible because it went absolutely contrary to the prevailing notion that there could be only one hominid in that niche. Yeah. And that it was such an exclusive, singular niche. You just couldn't have these multiple ways of being a bipedal, brainy hominid. And so there just was no place to accommodate it. And when that was the case, then it didn't matter. That attitude has lingered even in the face of the discrediting of the single species hypothesis as it came to be known, and it still has persisted. So you get people like reacting to my writing, saying it can't exist, therefore it doesn't exist, and I don't care what evidence you think you have. there just was no place to accommodate it. And that has now begun to change. And so it's that theme of change, even though it's slow to still be openly acknowledged for all the reasons. Kuhn said in his book on scientific revolution, sometimes it takes an entire generation to die and pass away to clear the way for a new paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's very true.
Yeah,
that's very true. And I'm seeing that. I'm kind of in that transition age where
absolutely.
coming into the field on the heels of those who were still entrenched with the notions of single species hypothesis, absolute rejection of the Patterson-Gimlin film and everything associated with Bigfoot was just malarkey.
Yeah.
And now a lot of those people who said really silly things, like the gentleman who said, "Oh, it's inconceivable that that Patty could have a top half like a grill and a bottom half like a hairy human."
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yep.
They've left now.
Yeah.
People that have said silly things like, that pendulous breasts shouldn't be covered with hair. Ridiculous things like that just are baseless. I mean, those are entirely baseless. But so many of these expert utterances from back in the 60s and 70s about the Patterson-Gimlin film have just fallen by the wayside now. But people have that notion stuck in their head that it can't exist, therefore it doesn't exist. And like I said, that's changing. And so I was really beating that drum beat very, very strongly for the past year. And this paper then that was delivered at the time of the presenting of that Tinsdale Award was kind of a culmination. So I'm trying to get it out and about. If people will go, if they're interested in reading it, if they'll go to the Relic Hominoid Inquiry website, which is my online journal. So it's simply isu.edu/RHI. If you go under news and views, I've put a link to a PDF of that paper because although it's published already in the Journal of the Society, or let's see, what is it called? The Journal of Scientific Exploration. Excuse me.
Yep.
It's the Society for Scientific Exploration, but it was published there already. But there's a link to a PDF of that article, and I encourage people to take a look at it. And it, I think, will help to put things in context. For me, it's so important because we're not just dealing with, we're not dealing with a paranormal phenomenon, in my opinion.
I agree.
I have no evidence to support that. We're not dealing with something that just has stepped out of a portal from another dimension. We're not dealing with something, that just drops out of the blue, or that you have to come up with extraordinary explanations for its observed behavior and presumed nature. I mean, it falls squarely in the arena of anthropology. I've got this quote as I was preparing this paper, and I was thumbing back through Ivan Sanderson's book. This paragraph jumped out at me, and he makes the statement to the effect that, at some point in the future, he says, at some point in the future, this whole business will be plucked out of the realm of the mysterious and plopped squarely in the discipline of anthropology. And that was 50 years ago, and it's just finally starting to show signs of actually happening now. And if I played even a small part, if the Dinsdale Award recognizes even a small part that I have played in facilitating that, then I'm happy for that. That's gratifying.
Well, I have to say, I'm really impressed. Congratulations, and on behalf of all the thousands and maybe tens, hopefully hundreds of thousands of people that appreciate your work, I'm very, very grateful. I know what you do it's very difficult. It's important to be brave and push forward, and we gotta create a paradigm shift. And in your lifetime would be really nice. So because I mean, this year would be nice, and that's why this year, as you know, I'm doing some really extreme things. And again, people are calling me crazy. And why are you going to go do this? And why is it all crazy? Well, you know what? I have support of amazing people like you. And when that news hits about what my new push for a paradigm shift is going to entail, I really hope it shocks up people. I hope you get lots of attention. I hope that everybody that's involved gets lots of attention, because it's and this is the biggest problem is I think people drop it and dismiss it so easy, because if we're right, this is like we're not gonna rattle anthropology. We're gonna shake the core of its foundations. Like, this is absolutely enormous. Like, could it be? I couldn't think of a bigger discovery. I mean, if they proved aliens were real, I think it would be the step below this. Okay, aliens are real. We kind of knew there should be something in space. But we had a giant primate roaming bipedally. The most man-like primate was on the planet right here the whole time, and we didn't know it. I mean, I think that's just that's the biggest difficulty with the paradigm shift is how do you get people to go, you know what, you're wrong. Like, those books, you guys are out to lunch, and wow, and I think it's a hard pill to swallow, but really, thank you very much for all you do and pushing forward that. It's to all of us out there, and even the people that don't, speak, and the people that know about this species and see how important it is. We are all so tremendously grateful for all the work you do. And I've been there, I've seen it, casting of tracks, sending out things. What did you get paid to win this award? What did you get paid for your speaking engagement? Right? What was in it for you?
Yeah.
And what was in it for you was you're just trying to, it's all about the truth. At the end of the day, no one's going to know how rich Jeff Meldrum was or care about your properties or how many trucks you had. What they're going to know is what Jeff Meldrum worked for and fought for. And you are an inspiration to me and so many others out there. So with heartfelt gratitude, thank you very much for what you do. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. That's very nice.
So you have a recent acknowledgement of, and I'm not even trying to pronounce that word, Ichthyotaxon. What is it?
Yeah, Ichthyotaxon is that's the taxonomic system by which we label tracks and traces, fossilized tracks and traces. And I, as some out there will already know, went out on the limb, so to speak, and with the encouragement of a number of colleagues, erected a taxon for the Sasquatch tracks, not Sasquatch itself, and so it's Anthropoidopes ameriborealis, which is simply North American ape foot. But the importance of that was that it not only gave a handle by which to make reference to it, but the process requires a description and diagnosis. What are the distinguishing characteristics that set these tracks apart? And so that has been established and has been, codified somewhat now through peer review publication since 2007. But the nice thing was I recently co-authored a paper with Martin Lockley and another colleague from Korea. Some people out there will know Martin Lockley, who's kind of been the guru of fossil footprints and has written a number of excellent books and just done fabulous work out of Colorado. But then and our colleague in Korea is one of the leading ichnologists in Korea, in Asia, and has worked with hominin footprints over there as well, more recent human footprints, fossilized. But anyway, the three of us wrote a review paper that went through the hominin fossil record from beginning to the present, right up to the present. And what's nice, though, is because Martin is very interested in Sasquatch, very impressed by the footprint evidence.
Wow.
From his point of expertise. And in fact, our Korean colleague was as well. And based on his conversations with Martin and his reading of what I'd published previously, had invited me to be a guest at the conference that the two of them organized, and specifically asked me to speak not just about my work with hominin footprints, but specifically discuss the Sasquatch track, and made quite a point of it, of my presence at the press conference that was held. And my presence and interest in Sasquatch. Anyway, they encouraged me to include in the paper reference to the Sasquatch tracks as one more form of hominin or hominoid tracks.
Yeah.
And included a brief description and references to the Ichthyotaxon. And of course, that paper was published in a peer-reviewed monograph or not a monograph, an edited volume, a book entitled "The Trace Fossil Record of Major Evolutionary Events." And it was interesting because the editors conveyed to us that some of the reviewers raised some eyebrows and raised some concerns about our paper being published with inclusion of mention of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And both of my colleagues rose to my defense most vigorously.
Isn't that a wonderful feeling? That is a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, that's nice. And the editor acquiesced. And so it's in print and in a very prestigious publication.
That is fantastic.
So that was, that was a good acknowledgement. I mean, the more we can get it out there where people will occasionally come across it, because as I said, the shift is occurring, and the upcoming generation, when I present at the physical anthropology meetings, the national meetings, there's a huge amount of interest, and it's largely, it's kind of interesting. It's bipolar. It's from the younger students and faculty who are embarking on the careers and have been sort of raised on the notion that there could indeed be something like this out there. They've seen some of the TV shows and whatnot. And then on the opposite extreme, it's those who are approaching retirement and feel at greater liberty to discuss things that are a little more controversial and to explore and express their ideas about those things. And so it's good. I think there is a change afoot, so to speak.
Oh, come on, you meant that. That was all good.
Yeah.
So you have fieldwork plans.
Well, yes. I'm still crossing my fingers. We are hoping to go to Indonesia this summer and do some archaeological work looking for remains of the little people there.
Homo florenziensis? Homo florenziensis?
Well, that's very, very possible. Very possibly the remains of very recent Homo florenziensis. But as is always the case, and I've had other archaeologists, anthropologists share their own horror stories of the bureaucratic quagmire of trying to coordinate with foreign colleagues and navigate the minefield that is the bureaucracy to get permits and everything lined up. We're in our second round of attempts. We got permission last year, but too late to act upon it. It took so long.
I thought it was a done deal. You still have to. Oh my gosh, that's awful.
Well, I thought it was a done deal too, because we had initially gotten our permits approved, but then the research visas are held up in the immigration office, and so
oh my God,
if we don't hear within the next few weeks to a month or so, it's going to be problematic in making all final arrangements. So anyway, cross your fingers. I'm hoping that still works, but then otherwise, we've got more field work in the works, and we're hoping to be able to utilize more aerial survey technologies to support those field efforts. And I'm very anxious and eager to see, what that can produce. We'll have a lot of troubleshooting, breaking in the new technology and whatnot, but I'm optimistic that this is the route we have to go.
That's great, fantastic. So your field guide to relic hominids.
Well, yes, I had a sabbatical recently, and one of the goals there was to complete my second book, which cast the net more broadly. And I got sidetracked by a request from my publisher of the Sasquatch Field Guide to do a second field guide, which became sort of a shrunken head, a synopsis or abstract, if you will, of the book, which is Sasquatch, Yeti, and Other Wild Men: A Field Guide to Relic Hominoids. That's not the exact working title of my book, but it's close. But it was that. It's looking at this sort of two facets of this paradigm shift: the acknowledgement of multiple species coexisting in the past, and that being the rule rather than the exception. And then the other facet is that many of those multiple bushy lineages of that bushy tree have persisted until much more recently than ever recognized. I just was reviewing for a class I was teaching in human evolution a talk that was given that drew attention to a specimen that I had overlooked, a specimen of Homo heidelbergensis in Africa, archaic hominin, that has a date of less than 13,000 years ago. So, I've often pointed to some of the archaics that are known from far eastern Asia, from China. I was able to look at a specimen in the museum there that was as robust and archaic as a Neanderthal, but without the remarkably derived traits that set Neanderthals apart. It's a form of what we call Homo heidelbergensis, the species that immediately preceded us and Neanderthals. Mm-hmm. That in China was dated to approximately 20,000 years ago, which is amazing. I mean, that because modern Homo sapiens were in China by 45 to 50,000 years ago. So for 20,000 years, there were these two species coexisting and weren't mixing to the point that either lost identity. I mean, there was some mixing. There's evidence of some hybridization and, the story of the Denisovans, for example. Mm-hmm. But likewise, in Africa, there were at least two lineages, one retaining these very archaic, heavy skeletal features, and then the more gracile modern Homo sapiens living side by side. And if this date, is correct, and this is in fact an archaic, a Homo heidelbergensis, modern Homo sapiens arose in Africa by about 195,000 years ago. And this fossil is only 13. So for almost 200,000 years, there were at least two species of remarkably closely related species that remain distinct from one another. So why would it be surprising that there are large bipedal hominoids in North America? Why would it be surprising that there are almas in Russia that might be relic Neanderthals, or Yeren that could be, a Sasquatch-like creature, or even a Homo heidelbergensis? These things, the paradigm, the theoretical framework now, it accommodates this. We should actually be asking, why wouldn't there be? People have proposed, well, we're the only hominin standing on the planet. Well, why would the present be so different? I mean, other than simply resorting to our increased technology and our increased population. But gee whiz, there's lots of examples where species that were forced to the fringes hung on for long periods of time, right under the nose of human.
Well, and it's really
scrutiny.
I know science likes to be hard with its facts, but it's very arrogant to assume that I found this fossil and this is the last one. I mean, come on.
Well, right. Exactly. Right.
They should throw some stats in there and go, okay, the probabilities that, this and that, okay, we probably live, you know what I mean? Like, give it the fact that this is the last one and that's the one you found. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's really arrogant.
And that is being, sometimes it's just oversimplification. But when you pin someone down, and I discuss this with my colleagues, they'll acknowledge that. Well, yeah, gee whiz, if we've got one that's clearly this at 13,000 years ago, then it could easily have survived. So that's what I'm talking about. The shift is occurring. It's just that people are still, they're still a little reluctant to, just like we were talking about Sasquatch walking out across the road. When you go out on and pursue this line of thought, you're out in the middle of the road. You don't have the benefit of cover of all of your colleagues.
No.
Of like-minded or of at least consensus opinion.
Well, and you had some cover with your track work, so that's fabulous to hear that some people, because it's so many times I can't even tell you people that I've worked with people and they get some heat and then they turn tail and run the other way. And I it's no disrespect, but it's nice to have somebody stand up. You've stood up for me many times, and I really, really appreciate that. Just doing things, and it's not that you were extending yourself in any way. You're just pointing out things that are blatantly obvious, like, oh my God, give it a break. So,
sure. Let's take it on the face and take it one step at a time and prioritize the evidence.
Absolutely. So Les Stroud was in Pocatello?
He was, yeah, just yesterday. In fact, he came to Pocatello. Mm-hmm. He'd been here 2 years ago, mm-hmm. And he spoke at the invitation of the anthropology students who invited him out and arranged his.
Right, I saw the video.
This time, yeah, and this time he came with his band. We saw a very different side of Les Stroud, the survivor man, that many people are unaware exists.
Yeah. But
that is the very prominent role that music plays in his life. And man, alive, what a talented guy he is.
Oh my gosh.
He did quite an amazing show. And of course, he opened up to Q&A during a break, and there were a few questions about Bigfoot. He did talk a lot about his survivor man Bigfoot experience. And he said one thing that was really quite interesting. He said he's reached the point where it's no longer the question of if, it's the question of what. Mm-hmm. And what is it? Yep. What is the nature of this thing? And he shared some of the varied experiences he had as he traveled across the country and met all different kinds of people who are caught up in this search.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the different perspectives and different opinions as to what it is. He said he wasn't prepared for that variety of opinion, but he retreats back to a position of just coming to terms with the evidence and experience that he's had, and basically just laying down the challenge. All right, that's your opinion. Show me.
Yeah.
Take me out to where you're having these experiences, and let me spend a few days there and see what
I know somebody who did that. I have. Oh wait, that was me. Never mind. And the episodes are on Survivor Man TV network, and I can't express enough when people watch them. I mean, I know there have been these there's these Bigfoot TV shows that fake and they lie and they cheat, and it's real. They really do that. Survivor Man did nothing of the sort. Everything you see was real. Everything really happened that way. If he ever saw me hoax anything, there's a rumor going around now that somebody says Les Stroud caught me putting a Sasquatch costume in the trunk of a car.
Familiar.
Holy cow!
From Bob Hieronymus. Well, the nice thing is, and this is one of the things that he also shared with the audience, and that is, he was describing his launching of the SMTV, the Survivor Man TV network.
I have a membership.
That one of the channels. Yep, I do too. I'm waiting for more content to get on there, but he said that the Bigfoot channel, that will be the beauty of it, is that he will have all creative control. There won't be the network with their agenda. There won't be the formulaic time constraints and
this clip has to be 5 minutes and then a commercial break. Yeah.
Right. And so he can do instructional pieces. He can do little snippets of behind the scenes of Survivor Man Bigfoot, things like that, and of course he's inviting and welcoming contributions, submissions for ideas. He doesn't obviously have a huge budget at this point. That's the thing. Until it starts to build up ahead of steam, it will have to be more boots on the ground type of thing, without a lot of toys, a lot of technology, perhaps. But in any case, it'll provide a great venue. I mean, it's the same. It will provide the same kind of opportunity that I had tried to create by launching the Relic Hominoid Inquiry. That journal provided a venue for it. Still, the standards are still as high, but there's no prejudice.
Right.
There's no preconception of what should or shouldn't be published. It's published on its merits, even though it is discussing the possible existence of something that mainstream science is unwilling to recognize or to even acknowledge the possibility of.
Yes.
At this point. So, so I think if he holds true to those standards that he has displayed in the past, that there's a really great opportunity to put some really objective and non-sensational stuff. One of his ambitions before he got hooked on music was to be a wildlife photographer. He shared with us as well, and so if we can do, I've always waited for the day when we can do a nature documentary of the quality that you'd find on National Geographic or Nature or Nova, without any sensational music or this this music video style.
Yeah, that's what everybody wants. Well, that's what they want with. That's what the problem I had with Bigfoot North is. It's got a little bit of music and some fast cutting here, and they want more, and they want dramatic music when when you have that Sasquatch. Where's the music? You know what? Why don't you just let it happen? For God's sake, you can hear my footsteps. Just wait the moment of silence before I get bowled over with that big log that smashes me. Just wait for that. No. We need to build up, and then when the log hits you, we need a. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not doing it. But bottom line is, if the right network buys it and they all want to make it into that, it's going to get sold that way. It's going to be played that way, and it's raw footage, and they added their damn music to it. But the truth with me is that money gets me funding, and you give me money to go funding, and I'm back out in the field full time, and I'm taking people like you and Ian Redmond and John all back with me. So I am working very hard to sell the documentary and get as much money as I can for it, because even money wise, from my perspective, I put $900,000 into it over the last 12 years, and if I could just get a fraction of that back, I'm just going to go right back into the field. It means nothing.
Well, sure,
to me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I just want to get that.
That's important acknowledgement, of course. Well, and I'm sometimes challenged. Well, why do you do these documentaries? Well, for one, it helps with funding of research undertakings and so forth. But for two, it sometimes is a two-edged sword. But it's how you get the word out, and it's how it provides me opportunities to go places and to talk to people, to see sites that I wouldn't have otherwise.
Absolutely,
if I wasn't in the documentary, I wouldn't have been in China to see that remarkable set of footprints.
Right. Or that history documentary, that you did that I really disliked, because for me it was taking you and John and besmirching you and dragging, but yet they made an incredible 9-foot tall Sasquatch, and it was a good experience. Yeah. And the bottom line with that is, what really helped me get over it, because they did some deceitful stuff, and that show was very. I don't really want to talk about it. I know the president of History Channel. Sure. He was actually going to do a show on me, and he decided to go with them instead and did that show, and it was a little upsetting that he chose that fake thing over me. But bottom line is, people have to know this, is if you do nothing, and if you're not out there doing something, you'll get nothing. Guaranteed. You do nothing, you'll get nothing. So at least you're out there, you're trying, you're moving forward, you're working with some bonehead of a director that's going to change crap around, but you have to make a 9-foot. Where is that Sasquatch? That 9-foot tall plaster skeleton of a Sasquatch they made.
Yeah, it is. It's in a prominent position in the Museum of Oddities and Curiosities that the production company has accumulated over their many different exploits. So I was kind of crossing my fingers, although I didn't really have a place to put it.
You're a little crammed in there.
My fingers that they were going to leave it, but no, it still gets a lot of attention apparently in their little exhibit hall. But that's fine. I mean, it was the graphics are just as compelling. It's not something that stands up under close scrutiny as far as anatomical detail. That wasn't the intent.
Yeah.
It was just to convey it was to create kind of a straw man that we could talk about.
Yep.
and go ooh ah. It was unfortunate because the ooh ah scene is they wouldn't let me look at it until the cameras were rolling and it was all assembled, and then I walked in and they got my reaction. But then we had a lot of really interesting discussions about what the implications were of an animal that size.
Yeah.
What did the skeleton, any insights did the skeleton provide? Like, the discussion of why it appears that there is no neck because of those very deep, deep jaws. Mm-hmm. Those were really fascinating. Unfortunately, they tend to get cut, and you just have the ooh-ah sound bites and snippets. But nevertheless, it's been those conversations now feature prominently in my in this year's speaking engagements presentation that I'm using because people are always fascinated and curious, and it bears directly on the Patterson-Gimlin film because we used her as the standard for body proportions and coming up with the modifications necessary to turn a Neanderthal skeleton into a Sasquatch skeleton. So
well, you'll be excited. Yeah, you'll be excited to know that from the Bigfoot North that when I got hit with a log with those Sasquatch around me, I have video of a Sasquatch standing in that spot that you've seen, and then me standing in the spot after. And since I was inspired by somebody morphing my head into another Sasquatch, just to show people how big that Sasquatch's head is, it's approximately 14 inches across, which my head is 5 inches across. So, but based on that inspiration from the meathead who did that morphing, I'm going to do a video, and I'll show it to you when it's done. And I'm going to put it up online just to show how large that, because what happened was I actually took a PhD from Discovery Channel out just a couple of years ago and showed her my Sasquatch stuff. Discovery Channel was considering it. But anyways, what was the deciding factor for her is when I showed her that footage, and she saw me standing there with my arm in the air, and she was like, that creature is nearly 9 feet tall. I go, yeah. And he looks like he's 800 pounds or more. And I'm like, yeah. She goes, there's no way something could live like it. Nothing like that could live out there. It has to be fake. And she pretty much walked away after that. And the eyewitness reports are correct. I actually also have the track of that Sasquatch. I believe it's 16 and a half inches. I'll be able to get a exact size because I was following him in the snow when I saw where he was. So I'm going to do a size, and people are going to do the same thing that she did. Oh my God, it can't be that big. It can't be that huge. This is not possible. But from my perspective, it is real, and scientifically it'll be very cool to see exactly, because that was not the big Sasquatch of the group. He was as tall but not quite as thick. I would assume he's probably like maybe just as a theory, probably about a 20-year-old living with his possible father. I consider Sasquatch survive a lot like gorillas do, where they'll have black backs that grow up and even sometimes take over the troops after the old ones leave. That's one of my theories, and I believe that's a nearly fully grown Sasquatch, probably grown as tall as he's going to grow, not quite as thick, but knowing that he crushed the snow in that way, 3 feet of snow was crushed and squashed down by an animal that must have been tremendously heavy, which he was, but the width of his shoulders, I'm going to be able to get precise numbers, and exactly how tall he was, I'll be able to get precise numbers. And I'm almost like when I did a look at the video 5 Sasquatch that person morphed my head into, I was so like, oh my God, how am I going to tell this to people that the head was 14 inches wide? I was there and I saw it, and I know that's how big he is. I know this is how large Sasquatch are, but it's almost like, how the hell is anybody going to believe this truth? They're enormous. Like, they're huge. Mm-hmm. They're twice the size of a gorilla. How can I convince a primatologist that they're living right out in the backcountry when they have a 17-inch track and they weigh over 800 pounds? That's really the struggle, is when you get down to the truth. That Sasquatch that I filmed, I mean, the facts are there. I used Rocky Mountain Douglas fir pine needles to measure how wide his head is, and I was really conservative, and it's 14 inches, Jeff. Like, your head is maybe 5.5 inches wide at the most, and his head across. I'm looking right here across the room at Grover Krantz's reconstruction of the Gigantopithecus skull, and I would wager, without throwing a ruler up against it, that it's at least 12 inches across. Oh my God!
Just the skeleton, the skeleton across the cheekbones. So 14, doesn't surprise me. I mean, anytime someone raises their eyebrow and says, "How could something that big live out there?" Just throw them some statistics about the size and weight of a bull moose. Sure. Or a grizzly bear. Or a Kodiak grizzly bear. Sure. Yeah, or even just a coastal grizzly bear. I'll tell people they just don't realize the mass of those creatures. Yeah. I tell people, look up bear 122. He's right in my own backyard. He's a grizzly bear so big he eats other bears. He's enormous. I took my family for a hike. Bear 122 was right over in our backyard on our hiking trail. And you look at him and you got to go, what is that? Like, that is huge. You know, this grizzly bear is, 700 pounds walking around in the wilderness. So, and a powerhouse, enormous, like, monsters are real if you want to look at it that way. My God, the things that creature can do. He's like a bulldozer when he's digging up ground squirrels. It's scary, the power that they have, but it's real. They exist, and I
I shake my head and put my hand on my forehead and go, how am I going to get people to believe me when I honest to God have a 9-foot Sasquatch right there, and I filmed it and videotaped it and took the measurements, and what do I do?
And see, that was part of the motivation of doing this skeletal reconstruction again, was it just provided a springboard into that conversation. And one of the first questions we discussed, and unfortunately in the final the final edit of the documentary, not a lot of that conversation made it in, but
no.
One of the first things we discussed was, how would an animal this big make a living?
Yeah.
I mean, how would they survive out there? How would they remain undetected and so forth, just like we're talking here? And when you're sitting there looking at this creature, and that the implication of that weighs on you, but then you stop and think, well, my goodness, there are other animals that are just as big. They're out there. So how do they make a living? Well, they're usually either herbivores, dedicated herbivores that have a ruminant stomach or something like that, or they're omnivores and they have a varied diet, and they have in this case, look at the chewing apparatus. It's one of the things I show again in my presentation as well. I take, because I talk about the remarkable resemblance between the robust Australopithecine skull,
mm-hmm.
And I show how remarkably similar in proportion it is to, I use that rather than Gigantopithecus,
mm-hmm.
because it's a possible candidate, but we have a much more complete skull of those fossil forms than we do of Gigantopithecus.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the point being, the things that go with those deep jaws and flat face are these remarkably enlarged premolars and molars. So I turn the skull over, and I took a picture of the human dentition as seen from below, the upper teeth,
mm-hmm.
and the maxillary dentition of this Australopithecus boisei, or Paranthropus boisei. And then I took that, and already the teeth are huge by comparison to the human.
Mm-hmm.
But then I say, now wait, let's take that skull, which is of a little 5-foot to 5.5-foot hominid.
Mm-hmm.
Let's blow it up to as big as we had to make it to fit on this 8.5-foot skeleton of Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't believe the surface area of just the premolars and molars of this skull blown up to that size compared to the human. This thing is a chewing machine.
Yeah.
I mean, it can probably chew through just about anything that's out there.
Yeah.
Including mollusks on the beach, and and nuts and bones and so forth. And so when you see that, then you start to realize, well, that's how this thing makes a living in a temperate forest.
Absolutely.
And or seashore, seashore environment.
Yeah.
Along British Columbia. Yeah.
Yeah, my home.
Amazing stuff.
Yes. Well, it's been fantastic having this conversation with you. We have to do this more often. But
okay.
I really enjoyed it. It's wonderful speaking with you. Thank you very much for taking the time. This has been 2 hours. This will have to be broken into 2 episodes. That's fantastic. I was hoping that would happen. So that's been fantastic. So we'll stay in touch. And everybody for tuning in. Thank you very much for tuning into Bigfoot North Radio with the amazing and fantastic Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who's, my gosh, done so much for the world of Bigfoot. I'm speechless in gratitude from everybody, from all you've done. It's amazing. Congratulations. I'm astounded by what you've accomplished in such a short time, just these past couple of years. So, and we'll stay in touch, and hope everything goes well with your Indonesia trip. I really hope that works out for you. My goodness. So, yeah.
So do I. Yeah. Well, thank you.
And we'll stay in touch. So take care.
All right. Okay. Very good.